Want to get to another big story that we have been tracking here, as once redacted documents that include details about Jeffrey Epstein are going to be released soon. Now, they were possibly thought to be released yesterday. It has not happened just yet. Could be today. But I do want to talk all about this and what those documents might include. So let's bring in Jim DeSimone, a trial lawyer and civil rights attorney in Los Angeles, to talk more about all of this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Good morning, Josh.
So first off, I do want to start with the basics here, because a lot of people have heard of Jeffrey Epstein but don't know the whole story. They just kind of know bits and pieces. So what can you tell me about Jeffrey Epstein and who he was?
Well, he was a money manager, and the way he made his money is in dispute, but clearly he worked with people who had access to a lot of wealth. And what's interesting is that he was found guilty in Florida in 2008 for soliciting and procuring a minor for prostitution. But even after that, he still had access to power. And what he would do was lure women, mostly from Eastern Europe, some under 18, and he would give them access to power and make these promises. You're going to get jobs, you're going to get a career, introduce them to people like Bill Gates and Donald Trump, and make them feel important. But no jobs materialized. And what he was doing was grooming each of these women for sex, and he manipulated them. And that's why you had hundreds of women, literally hundreds of women, come forward and say they were exploited by Jeffrey Epstein during the period of time of 2008 until he was arrested in 2019.
There's been a lot of interest, a lot of thought and talk about these documents that were once redacted that are expected to be released. Again, they were expected to be made public yesterday. Hasn't happened just yet, but do we know, what do we expect to see in these documents once they are released?
Well, I think there's two things. Is one, you had a lot of does, so now the judge is not allowing those does to be named, and basically the people's names are going to be revealed. We already have a lot of people who have been revealed. Some have been surprising. Noam Chomsky, for instance, the MIT linguist who is progressive to say the least, he's on the list. You had Alan Dershowitz, who is on the list. But there may be some people that we don't know about that has been on that list. But the second thing is the details. Where were these individuals being flown to? Were they being flown on the Lolita Express to Jeffrey Epstein's island, where you had women who were groomed for sex and expected to have sex with the visitors? Or were they flying to other places? For instance, Robert F. Kennedy, a presidential candidate, is on some of those flight logs. He says, hey, I'm just here with my family. I was being flown to places that didn't involve sexual grooming. But the devil is in the details, and I think we're going to find out more when those records are released.
It sounds like it's been kind of a lengthy legal battle to get these documents released. I've said it a few times, but they were redacted at first, and now more information is going to be released. How did this process all work, and how did we get to this point right here when we're going to see more of those lists that are not redacted?
Well, I think this really is a testament to the free press, Josh, because you really had the Miami Herald who pressed for this information because the civil cases settled. And so you didn't have anyone within the civil cases who are forcing this information to be released, as sometimes happens in our cases, where we're representing individuals and we want the truth to come to public light because these are important issues. By bringing this to the public light, you hopefully deter others from engaging in this type of conduct and manipulating and exploiting women, especially here where minors are involved. So you really had the Miami Herald who first raised the story, and then you had them pressing year after year to have these released, and it's their legal pleadings that has forced the judge to say, hey, I have no reason not to release this information to the public, and that's what we're waiting for. They won, freedom of the press won here.
Why do you think so many people are intrigued by these documents and want to see them so badly? Because we talked about different news outlets that want to get their hands on them, but you know, your everyday person who is there just sitting in their home or on social media, a lot of them want to see these documents as well. Why is that? What is the intrigue here?
Well, there is the old line that sex sells. So this is, interesting to people because it involves the very rich and famous and powerful, basically, who were involved in potential illicit activity. Now, I mentioned Robert F. Kennedy. There's no evidence that he engaged in anything that was illegal here. But people want to know, especially here in 2024, where we're going to elect a presidential candidate. The only presidential candidate that seems not to have been on those flight logs was Joe Biden. So let's get to the details and see what really happened. And then once you have the full amount of truth, people can discern for themselves if these were individuals who were just taken in by Epstein and had access to some power and didn't do anything illicit, or were they really part of his plot and his plan to manipulate women and to really bring in women from other countries to provide sexual favors to powerful men, which is of course is unlawful.
And as a legal expert, is there anything specifically that you are looking forward to seeing in these documents or finding out? Again, there's a lot of intrigue here and a lot of people have different things that they are looking for, but is there anything specifically that stands out to you that, you want information on or you want to see in those documents?
Where the people are going. Were they going to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and then connecting the behavior? Because right now, while we have names on flight logs, we don't have the receipts. We don't have the details of what occurred. What I expect to see in these documents is much more detail as to who is involved in forcing these women to engage in sexual activity against their will. There may be some people who are very uncomfortable after this information comes out.
All right, and as I mentioned, a lot to this here. So do these documents being released actually change anything for anyone whose name does appear on them? Because obviously, different law enforcement agencies are already going to have these, I would imagine. So there's probably no criminal proceedings that would happen as a result, right?
It's unlikely at this point that there's going to be additional prosecution. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein is dead, so his story, he's not going to be able to bring anybody else in order to get himself a lighter sentence. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell has a 20-year sentence. She's already been sentenced, at the age of 60 to 20 years in prison. So that is a serious impact. But you look at what happened to Prince Andrew. Well, all of his, all of his duties as a prince were taken away from him, and he was completely stripped of his ability to act within the royal family. So there can be those types of implications for the people involved. And let's face it, it could upend some lives and ruin some marriages as well.
All right, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help break down all of the details, the latest information, as we do wait for those documents to be released. Is there anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, I think that what you have here is the women who were involved, who got in so deep, really felt trapped. And the important thing is that by speaking out, if they can get access to individuals like ourselves as lawyers and reveal to people what is going on, there is law enforcement and there's also private attorneys who are interested in unsealing the truth, as well as the press. So anyone who is in this situation of exploitation should really reach out for help.
All right, Jim, thank you again for taking the time to join us and help break down all the details. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Josh.